Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're diving deep into why you wouldn't last 24 hours in medieval times.
Right. And our mission here really is to sort of cut through that romantic haze, knights, castles.
Yeah, all the fancy stuff.
Exactly. And get down to the gritty, sometimes pretty shocking realities of everyday life back then.
We've got a detailed look here. Covers food, sanitation, work, health, justice, even warfare, and just daily living.
Prepare for some surprises, maybe some unsettling facts, too. Let's maybe start with food. Or what passed for food?
Good starting point. Yeah, forget those big feasts you see in movies. For most people.
Not happening. The typical diet was, well, bland and often contaminated.
The main thing was pottage, right? The sort of watery vegetable soup.
Yeah, basically. Could simmer for days. And the transcript mentions, get this, weevils and dirt were just like common ingredients.
Yeah. Just accepted. Wow. It really paints a picture of just scraping by, doesn't it?
A desperate struggle.
Yeah.
And the bread. Not your nice fluffy loaf.
No. Dense, dark. And it could have bits of stone in it from the grinding.
Stone chips, yeah. So when they say people had strong teeth, it wasn't good genes necessarily?
It was because they had to chew through rocks.
Pretty much. And here's something really wild. Ergot. A fungus on rye.
Oh, yeah. I read about this. The transcript links it to, well, hallucinations, burning sensations, death even.
And maybe even the witch hunt hysteria. It's a chilling idea, isn't it? How much unseen biology might have shaped history.
Totally. Like mass panic fueled by moldy bread. Crazy.
It's sobering. A reminder of how misunderstood natural stuff could cause huge social problems. And meat. That was a luxury.
Right. And often spoiled when they got it.
So they'd use heavy spices, if they could afford them, just to mask the taste. The 5-second rule. More like 5 days back then.
Huh. And washing it down, water was dangerous.
Yeah, often contaminated, human waste, all sorts of nasty stuff. So what do they drink?
Weak beer or ale? Even kids?
Everyone. Adults maybe 8 pints a day. The brewing process killed the germs, see? So it's actually safer than water.
That's backwards to us. Like, you needed an ID for water, not beer.
Pretty much. And fish, even that was often dried or salted. If you lived inland, it probably arrived. Pretty funky.
Okay, so the food's questionable, which leads us nicely into sanitation, or lack thereof.
Oh, boy. Yeah, a stinky situation is putting it mildly. Go into the bathroom.
Chamber pot under the bed.
That's the one. You just emptied it into the street. Maybe shouted, "Gardy-loo," if you were feeling considerate.
Watch out for the water! Except it wasn't water. Grim.
And castles. Those grand places had garderobes. Just holes in the wall, dropping waste down, sometimes 70 feet.
Imagine the smell at the bottom of the castle wall. Wow.
And in public. Open sewers, or just, designated spots. London had a few common privies over the rivers, but not many.
It's just, the scale of the public waste problem is mind-boggling. The Thames in London, a monster of stink.
Yeah, and someone had to clean some of it up, the gong farmers.
Right, they cleaned out cesspits at night.
Yep. Paid pretty well, apparently, because who'd want that job? But total social outcasts. Because, the smell.
Can't imagine. And toilet paper didn't exist.
Nope. Leaves, moss, your left hand, maybe. Wealthier folks might use wool or hemp scraps.
Couldn't the Romans have sponges on sticks?
They did, with vinegar or salt water. But like a lot of Roman knowledge, that got lost in the Middle Ages.
Crazy how knowledge just disappears like that. Makes you appreciate, well, toilet paper.
Definitely the simple things.
Ah.
Okay, so life stank, the food was risky. How did people actually spend their days? Work.
Yeah, work. Not exactly glamorous. Most people. Peasant farmers.
Sunrise to sunset, basically, with really basic wooden tools.
Burning like 4,000 calories a day. No gym membership needed there.
Not at all. And even if you were a craftsman, it wasn't easy. Blacksmiths, toxic fumes, burns all the time.
And tanners, working with urine. And chemicals, turning their skin yellow. Yikes.
Terrible smell, too. Not the romantic guilds you might picture.
And kids started working really young, right? Apprenticeships at age same.
Sometimes, yeah. Lasting maybe up to 14 years,
Yeah.
6-7 days a week. Childhood wasn't really a thing as we know it.
The video had that flow chart. Can you lift heavy things? Yes. Farmer. No. Early death. It's bleak, but...
Probably pretty accurate for many. Very little chance to change your station in life.
And some jobs for the really poor. Link boys.
Yeah.
Carrying torches.
Yeah, lighting the way. And pure finders. Collecting dog poo for the tanners.
Oh, man. Desperate times. And wages were barely enough to survive.
Just enough for maybe 2 loaves of bread. The minimum needed to not die before your next shift, basically.
Which brings us, I guess, to health, and that sounds even worse.
Yeah. Grim prospects is putting it mildly. Disease was everywhere. Real medicine, basically non-existent.
The medieval WebMD just says, you're probably going to die.
Pretty much. A simple cold could kill you.
Yeah.
They thought illness came from bad air, miasma, or an imbalance of the humors.
Right, the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile.
And the treatment was often trying to rebalance them, like bloodletting, just draining blood.
Or leeches. Sometimes 70 at once. That sounds like torture itself.
By our standards, yeah, a lot of it was. Mortality rates were insane. 30% of kids died before age 5.
An average life expectancy was only 30 or 40 years.
If you were lucky. And that's without massive pandemics like the bubonic plague, which killed, what, maybe half of Europe?
Unbelievable fragility of life, and teeth must have been awful.
Oh, terrible. No real hygiene. Dentists basically just pulled teeth when the screaming got loud enough.
And the medicines they did have, sometimes deadly, mercury.
Mercury was prescribed for loads of things. Side effect? Might kill you faster than the disease.
So, bad food, no sanitation, backbreaking work, no real health care? It's a wonder anyone survived.
Exactly. And the poor hygiene just spread everything faster. Hand sanitizer was wiping your hands on your dirty clothes.
Okay. So if you somehow navigated all that, you still had the justice system, which sounds arbitrary and cruel.
That's a fair description. Justice was harsh, unpredictable. Laws varied wildly from town to town.
And most people didn't even know the laws.
Not necessarily, until they were accused. So the medieval Miranda rights were basically, you have the right to be punished, good luck, begging for mercy.
Punishments rarely fit the crime, it seems. Hand chopped off for stealing food.
Yeah. And in England, over 200 crimes carried the death penalty, including stuff like cutting down a royal tree or stealing something worth barely anything.
And trial by ordeal, that sounds nuts. Carrying hot iron.
Yeah. If it got infected, you were guilty. If not, maybe innocent, or being thrown in water.
That's the one where sinking meant innocence, but floating meant guilt.
Right. Sinking, you drown, float, and they execute you. A complete no-win.
And executions were public entertainment.
Big time. Community events, food, drinks. Hanging was seen as merciful. Drawing and quartering for treason, horrific.
But nobles got off easier sometimes. Trial by combat.
Or paying blood money. If you were poor, you had basically no defense. Jails were just holding pens.
Dark, overcrowded, chained up, no food provided.
No. You relied on charity or starved. And torture was standard practice to get confessions.
The rack, thumb screws. Most people would confess just to make it stop, right? Even if innocent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which usually led to execution anyway. Even minor stuff meant public humiliation.
Stocks. People throwing rotten food at you.
Or the ducking stool for women accused of gossiping. And law enforcement was, well, minimal.
Elderly night watchmen just shouting, "Stop thief!"
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You were presumed guilty. The burden of proof was on you.
Yeah.
Often through those ordeals.
Okay, if you dodged that, there was always war. Which wasn't glorious knights and banners, was it?
Not for most people involved. It was brutal, chaotic, constant. The 100 Years' War went on for 116 years.
Wow, so the average person probably saw multiple wars in their lifetime.
Very likely. And armor. The full-plate stuff was like buying a sports car today. Those soldiers had padded cloth, maybe a few metal bits.
Knights in shining armor were rare. Weapons are mostly spears, axes, farm tools even.
For the common soldier, yeah. Swords were for the wealthy. The English longbow, though, that was feared. Could pierce armor.
But it deformed the archers' skeletons.
The strain was immense, yeah. Battles were incredibly lethal. Towton, 1461. 28,000 dead in one day.
That's staggering, like 1% of England's male population.
Many froze to death after the battle, too. And if you got wounded in battle, infection usually finished you off.
And armies just lived off the land, burned crops, killed livestock.
Absolutely. Destroyed homes. Support our troops. Back then, probably meant please don't take all our food and burn our village.
Sieges sound particularly horrific. Starvation, cannibalism.
It happened. Sieges could last for years. Siege of Candia lasted 21 years.
21 years. Unimaginable.
And disease killed more soldiers than fighting. Army medics basically said rub dirt on it or prepare to meet your maker.
And civilians caught in the middle, flee and starve or stay and face violence.
Terrible choices. Whole villages could be massacred. Just constant backdrop of violence and insecurity.
Okay, so let's talk about just the day-to-day. The misery, the lack of comfort. It sounds like even without war or plague, life was just hard.
Definitely. The first thing that hits you from the sources is the smell.
Yeah.
Overwhelming.
Human waste, rotting food, unwashed bodies, tanning chemicals, Slaughterhouses, smoke everywhere, no garbage collection.
Just layers of stench. You can see why wealthy people carried pomanders, little bags of herbs just to hold into their noses.
And personal hygiene, basically non-existent. Bathed a few times a year.
If that. They thought bathing opened pores to disease. Lice were just
Hmm.
normal. A moderate lice infestation wasn't even a big deal.
Okay. And clothes, rough, itchy, rarely washed.
Yep, coarse linen, heavy wool. You'd only own maybe 2 sets. And thin leather shoes that offered zero protection.
Plus, you wouldn't even understand people easily. Middle English is practically a foreign language.
Absolutely. And zero privacy, one-room houses, shared beds, sometimes even with strangers if you were traveling. Servants always around.
And entertainment was limited and often violent.
Public executions,
Yeah.
animal baiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe some traveling performers or storytellers if you were lucky.
Plus that rigid social hierarchy. Born a peasant, die a peasant, mostly.
Almost no social mobility for the vast majority. 90% were peasants tied to the land. And their understanding of the world was limited, filled with superstition.
Witches, demons, magic explaining everything, medical problems blamed on spirits or bad stars.
Solar eclipses causing mass panic. Medieval fact-checking was basically asking the oldest person in the village.
And getting news was slow, unreliable. Messengers on foot or horseback.
News from 50 miles away could take days. From overseas. Months, if it arrived at all. A very small, very immediate world for most people.
So, wrapping this up. Thinking about trying to live back then, it really wasn't the romantic picture, was it?
Not even close. From the food you were eating or trying not to eat things in the food, to how you disposed of waste or didn't.
To the constant threat of disease, violence, injustice, daily life was just a brutal, relentless challenge.
So think about this. After hearing all that, what single modern comfort do you think you'd miss the absolute most if you were suddenly dropped into the Middle Ages?
That's a tough one. Soap, antibiotics, the internet.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Right.
A stark reminder of how dramatically, thankfully, our world has changed.